Are there any global issues that this leads to, like differences between men and women? You did have...
That's for you to say. This is right up your alley.
Kind of. Well, you did have this you said you had this big argument on your blog among commenters about this issue of prostitution in New Zealand. There was this article, and it got down to the question of how men and women are different.
Yeah, well, there was an article linked to it on the sidebar about how prostitution had been legalized in brothels in New Zealand, and then that allowed the brothels to be set up as a good workplace where there were, the prostitutes were employees with benefits and rights, and there was all the sorts of safety and health, and it was treated as a normal business, so that it was an occupation you could go into easily. And then there was a question of whether is that really the right solution to prostitution, to set it up like a normal business so that women, when they need money, that would be one of their options. Or should it be in the dark and in this criminal way where women could be taken advantage of, so fewer women will do it. If it becomes too easy to do, maybe women will just, I need some extra money, I'm going to take a second job there, or obviously there's an upside and a downside to it. That was the post. But in the comments, there got to be, and I didn't read all of these comments, but there was a strangely bitter fight among the people, some of whom were taking, and it was a fight that took place mainly because some people were taking a strong position that all women, prostitutes or not, were in it for the money, and that the woman's side of the sexual arrangement was about money, so it was all sort of like they're all prostitutes. And then there were some people really strongly taking that position, which I was sort of surprised to see. But it seems to me that there are a lot of men who have been, hurt and disaffected, maybe men that don't have enough money and feel they're being rejected. And, I worry a little bit about them. But there's some really bitter attitudes.
And did this argument break out before or after it was announced that you were getting married?
Before.
Okay. So it's not just these men were bitter over having lost you to me, and they started taking it out in a kind of generalized misogyny. Well, no, I think, look, I think a lot of men have had the experience of seeing women be attracted to men who had a lot of resources. I don't think, and if you're a man without resources, I guess you're not really happy about that pattern of behavior. Yeah. There's of course controversy over whether to what extent the pattern is actually there, B, to what extent it's kind of in the genes. According to evolutionary psychology, there are reasons to think that women would be more attracted to, social status per se, than men, and social status including access to resources, access to social resources, power, the famous Henry Kissinger line, and so on. So it makes sense, and it does seem to be the case in my experience that there's at least a little bit of an asymmetry in this regard. I mean, right? You probably agree with that, right, or not?
There's a question of how much of it is at a biological level that we evolved that way because of the way pregnancy and works, that women need. Yeah. Or whether it's a social thing. I was saying, I know back in the Bella DePaulo dialogue, that I was saying that I think, women still see this as something that makes a man attractive, even when you don't need them. I personally don't need any money. I'm a tenured law professor. I don't need economic support. That's one reason why I could be completely a solitude person, because I didn't need, that reason that so many women have for hooking up with men, or not hooking up, but, forming a strong
hooking up in the old sense of the term.
Yeah, in the old sense. That there was an economic relationship that was really important. But then if the attractiveness of men gets defined that way because so many women see it that way, or because we've evolved to feel it that way, then what happens when you are a woman who really is financially independent? What do you want a man for at all? I now know the answer to that question.
And what is the answer?
For all those other things. For all the companionship, the sex, the protection, the feeling of being cared for.
But would you say that the social status of the man, kind of broadly defined, to include possibly wealth, or include political influence, or include esteem in the eyes of colleagues in academia or whatever, would you agree that looms large in your attraction to a man? Notwithstanding the fact that you yourself are a person of accomplishment and apparently of material security.
I think in general I would have said that, and I was puzzling over that when I was talking to Bella. But in this actual, in my current life, I see this has made me really put first these, because I don't have an economic issue of any sort, but to really put first, love. I mean, it's really all about love.
Well, right, but the question is, what are the ingredients of love? I mean, the argument being put forward in evolutionary psychology is that whether the woman is conscious of it or not, the social status of the man, broadly defined, figures in the love formula, in how attracted she's going to be. It may not be at a conscious level. And by the way, that's not to say that these things don't matter to a man. I mean, that men are in fact attracted to smart women and women of accomplishment and so on. It's a question of the relative weight these things have in the whole attraction process.
Well, I think people want social benefits outside of the couple, things out in the world. Mm-hmm. But I think the man is less likely. I think if the man thought he was going to the woman for her economic support, he would feel bad about that, and that a good man wouldn't really go for that. Whereas I think a woman would be more likely to see it as a legitimate component of what she was looking for and wouldn't really be ashamed of it, or would feel like she would be congratulated for getting it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that is a cultural factor. I mean, how kind of ashamed they would be to admit that this was part of their calculation. Yeah. I would actually suspect, contrary to what you seem to say some of your male commenters were saying, and they were apparently saying that, look, for women it always or very often boils down to how much money does he have or whatever. I actually would guess that, although that probably is a big factor, it is less of a conscious factor in the woman's assessment than it might be when a man is attracted to a very wealthy woman. I would say when you see that, that's more likely to be conscious calculation.
And in defense of my commenters, I should say the reason a fight broke out was because some people were saying one thing and some people were pushing back. So a lot of people said, no, you don't really need that much money. There are things you need to do. I mean, basically you need to, there are lots of things you can do to make women fall in love with you if you're a man.
Yeah, well,
it's not just about having a lot of money. A lot of people who work too hard on just getting the money don't have enough personal ability to do the things that would really make you be loved for reasons other than your money. If you just go to build up your resources, and that's what you're offering, then what else do you have to offer?
Right.
Maybe you put too much attention into that, and then that's all you have. And then if that's all the woman sees in you, maybe it's your own fault. Maybe you should have developed some other attributes, some other skills. And there was a lot of an attempt to sort of get men thinking about the other things that they could do that would make women.
And in fact, I mean, one thing to keep in mind in terms of the idea that women might have some instinctive attraction to wealth per se. I mean, that's kind of misleading because if you look at the environment in which almost all of human evolution took place, which is not just a hunter-gatherer environment, but a hunter-gatherer environment probably in which there was really very little differentials in material wealth of people, Mm-hmm. So, in other words, these aren't like the hunter-gatherer societies in Northwest North America where you actually had enough kind of wealth for there to be differentials of status. That kind of society shows up very late. Almost all of human evolution is in societies where wealth per se could just probably not be a big factor, and the attraction that could have been built in by natural selection would be more to, like I said, social status, influence, resources in the sense of social resources.
And also physical protection.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, women clearly, much to my regret, like, big, strong guys.
But you're very tall.
Tall will not save you from a saber-toothed tiger.
People don't realize, because they just see your head, they don't realize how tall you are. We saw, my son loves the... You run that, what is that TED thing?
Oh, the TED Talk?
Yeah, you do. You have a nice lecture, and it's surprising to see you there because you're much taller than people would picture you from just your head.
I'm not that tall. It's just that I'm so skinny that I look tall. Right. I'm actually
it's an optical illusion.
5'1" and 92 pounds.